It's so easy, yet people refuse to believe it. Think about that for a second. The answers to many of the struggles we face in life aren't hidden in complex formulas, secret rituals, or years of waiting. They're right in front of us, simple, clear, and available right now. But here's the twist. Most people turn away from them. Why? Because our minds are trained to think that the harder something is, the more valuable it must be. We mistake difficulty for truth, and simplicity for weakness. But what if the opposite was true? What if the easiest path was actually the most powerful? In this video, we're going to uncover why people deny the obvious, even when it could transform their lives. You'll see how your brain creates barriers, how emotions twist what you accept as real, and why we cling to struggle, even when freedom is a step away. And more importantly, you'll discover how to break that cycle. Psychologists call it the illusion of complexity. It's the idea that our brains don't trust what feels too easy. Imagine someone hands you the solution to a problem you've been wrestling with for years, and they say, just do this simple thing. Your first instinct isn't to try it, it's to doubt it. Because if it was really that easy, wouldn't everyone be doing it? That doubt isn't truth. That's programming, and most people let it control their lives. Here's another hidden layer. People resist easy answers because easy doesn't match their identity. If you see yourself as someone who has to fight for every inch, then receiving something simple feels wrong. It feels unearned. That's why people stay stuck, because their beliefs about themselves are heavier than the truth right in front of them. But simplicity doesn't mean weakness. Think about breathing. Think about water. Think about gravity. The most powerful forces in life operate with effortless ease. They don't fight, they flow. And yet we humans, with all our intelligence, overlook this law of nature. We complicate. We overthink. We chase. And in doing so, we miss the easiest path to peace, success, and transformation. By the end of this video, you'll see why your brain wants to deny what's simple. You'll understand the hidden psychological blocks that keep you from trusting what's obvious. And you'll learn how to shift your mindset so you can finally embrace the power of simplicity. Because once you do, you'll realize something profound. The life you're reaching for doesn't require struggle. It doesn't demand endless waiting. It doesn't need you to suffer. It asks only that you stop resisting what's already within reach. Stay with me until the end. Because this could be the moment where everything changes for you. This could be the moment you see that the door has been open the entire time. You only had to walk through it. The truth is simple. The path is easy. The only question left is, are you ready to believe it? Before we talk about the reasons people turn away from what is simple, we need to understand that this reaction comes from deep within human psychology. The mind is not just a tool for thinking. It is also a survival mechanism shaped over thousands of years. Our ancestors lived in environments where danger was everywhere, and quick thinking meant the difference between life and death. Because of this, the brain became wired to look for hidden threats, complex patterns, and things that required caution. If something appeared too easy, it often felt suspicious. This instinct, once helpful, now shows up in everyday life, in ways that stop us from accepting obvious truths. When people are presented with a truth that requires no struggle, their minds immediately start searching for hidden traps. It feels unnatural to accept something that does not demand effort. Human beings often connect value with difficulty. If a solution looks effortless, the brain assumes it must not be real. This is why we often overlook the simplest answers. For example, drinking water, sleeping well, or practicing gratitude can transform health and happiness. Yet people reject these practices because they seem too ordinary to be powerful. The mind whispers, it cannot be this easy. This resistance also ties into a psychological concept called cognitive dissonance. People struggle when reality does not match their beliefs. If you have spent years believing that success only comes from endless hard work, then being told that calm focus or a shift in mindset can also create success will clash with your inner story. Instead of adjusting your beliefs, the mind chooses to reject the simple truth. It protects your old narrative, even if that narrative keeps you stuck. The brain prefers consistency over change, even when change is good. Another layer of this is how humans are taught from childhood. We are trained to value struggle. Parents, teachers, and society often repeat the message that nothing worth having comes easy. Over time, this becomes a core belief. When we finally encounter something that contradicts it, the mind resists. It feels wrong even if it is right. This programming makes people believe that a complex plan must be more effective than a simple one. It is the reason why complicated diets or elaborate productivity systems attract attention, while basic truths about health and focus are ignored. The psychology of mistrust also plays a role. Humans naturally question anything that seems too good to be true. It is a defense mechanism against being deceived. While this instinct protects us from harm, it also blocks us from embracing truths that genuinely are simple. For instance, the idea that practicing daily gratitude can rewire the brain to feel happier has strong scientific support. But because it sounds too straightforward, many dismiss it without even trying. The protective mind treats simplicity as a red flag rather than a gift. This is why rejecting simple truths is less about logic and more about human psychology. The mind built to survive in a complicated world often overcomplicates what is already clear. Many reject truths not because they're wrong, but because they don't trust the source. This is one of the deepest reasons why simple facts, even life-changing ones, are pushed aside. Human beings are wired to evaluate not only the message but also the messenger. If the person delivering an idea does not fit our image of authority, if they do not look credible in our eyes, then our minds will automatically dismiss what they say. It does not matter if the information is correct, the lack of trust makes it invisible. Think about how often people ignore good advice, simply because it comes from someone they underestimate. A child might point out a very real problem, but adults brush it off because they're too young to understand. A friend might share a health tip that works, but it is disregarded until the same idea appears in a doctor's office or in a book by a recognized expert. The truth itself has not changed, only the source. This shows how much of our belief is based not on content, but on perception. Psychologists have studied this tendency for decades. One famous concept is the idea of source credibility. We judge information through filters like expertise, appearance, and trustworthiness. If someone seems knowledgeable and carries authority, their words are taken seriously. If not, even the clearest truth feels doubtful. This bias is not always rational, but it is powerful. In fact, experiments show that people are more likely to believe a false statement if it comes from a trusted figure than a true statement from someone they doubt. The mistrust of source also ties into human identity. People tend to trust those who mirror their own values and worldview. If the source feels like one of us, their truth feels safe. If the source feels like an outsider, the truth feels threatening. This is why the same idea can be embraced in one community and completely rejected in another. It is not about the idea itself, but about who delivers it, and how much that person aligns with the listener's beliefs. Misinformation spreads easily because it often comes from sources that people feel emotionally connected to. Social media influencers, friends, or figures who share someone's frustrations can deliver half-truths or even lies, but they are accepted because trust is already there. Meanwhile, accurate information from official or scientific voices may be ignored, not because it is wrong, but because the listener does not feel trust toward the source. This explains why facts alone rarely change minds. Without trust, truth cannot land. This dynamic shows up in everyday life too. At work, a new idea may be ignored until a senior leader repeats it, even if a junior member said it first. In families, wisdom may be overlooked until an outsider confirms it. Trust acts as the doorway. Without it, even the easiest truth cannot enter. The rejection is not about the truth itself, it is about the fear, doubt, and judgments attached to the person delivering it. False ideas spread fast. When repeated, they begin to feel real. This is the illusory truth effect. It is one of the most fascinating yet dangerous quirks of the human mind. The brain is designed to conserve energy, so it takes shortcuts when processing information. One of these shortcuts is familiarity. If we hear something often enough, our minds begin to treat it as reliable simply because it feels familiar. Truth in this case is not measured by evidence but by repetition. This is why rumors, myths, and half-truths can spread like wildfire. The first time someone hears a false claim, they may doubt it. But if the same claim appears again and again, through conversations, media, or even casual jokes, it begins to sink into memory. Over time, the brain mistakes the ease of recall for accuracy. Psychologists call this cognitive fluency. The easier something is to remember, the more likely we are to believe it. So a repeated lie feels more trustworthy than a complex truth that requires effort to understand. Think about advertising. Companies use repetition because they know the illusory truth effect works. A slogan repeated across billboards, commercials, and social feeds starts to feel like fact, even if it is just a marketing phrase. The same principle explains why political slogans, no matter how empty, can become powerful. Once a phrase is heard enough, it begins to shape beliefs. This is not because people carefully analyzed the claim, but because the brain equated repetition with reliability. The illusory truth effect also explains why misinformation on social media spreads so easily. A false statement can be shared thousands of times within hours. Each share increases exposure. With every repetition, the statement gains weight, not because of proof, but because it feels familiar. People scrolling through feeds often do not have the time or energy to fact-check everything they see. Instead, the brain leans on shortcuts. If something has been seen before, it feels safe to accept. Familiarity breeds belief, and belief spreads faster than fact-checking. What makes this effect even more powerful is that it works even when we think we know better. Studies have shown that even when people are warned that a statement is false, hearing it repeatedly still increases the chance that they will later believe it. The brain is influenced at a subconscious level. Repetition plants seeds that can grow even in the soil of doubt. That is why false health tips, conspiracy theories, or distorted stories can take root so deeply in society. This tendency is not just about gullibility, it is about how memory and attention function. The human mind is not a perfect recorder of facts. It is a pattern-seeking machine that values speed over accuracy. And in a world overflowing with information, the easiest signal the brain can use is repetition. If it echoes often enough, it feels true. This is the quiet power of the illusory truth effect, and it shapes more of our beliefs than most people realize. We naturally look for information that supports what we want to believe, rather than what's true. This is known as confirmation bias, and it is one of the strongest forces shaping human thought. The mind is not neutral when it processes information. Instead, it leans heavily toward ideas that match our existing beliefs, values, or emotions. When something fits what we already think, it feels comfortable. It feels safe. And so, without realizing it, we give that information more weight, more trust, and more attention than it deserves. Imagine someone who believes that hard work is the only path to success. If they see a story about someone working 80 hours a week and finally achieving wealth, they instantly accept it as proof. But if they encounter a story about someone who found success through balance, creativity, or even luck, they may dismiss it as unrealistic. The truth in both cases is that success can come in many ways, but the mind chooses only the pieces that protect its preferred narrative. This isn't about logic, it's about comfort. Confirmation bias also explains why people can read the same set of facts and walk away with completely different conclusions. Two individuals with opposing political views can watch the same debate, and each one will claim that their side won. It is not because they saw different words being spoken, it is because their minds filtered the information through the lens of what they already believed. Each one was searching for signals that matched their perspective, and they found them.
That selective search makes their belief feel stronger, even if the evidence was shared equally. This bias extends into everyday life in subtle ways. People who believe a certain diet works will notice and remember every success story about it, while ignoring or downplaying stories of failure. Someone who believes they are unlucky will remember every negative event but forget the times when things worked in their favor. The brain is not lying, it is simply choosing what to spotlight. Over time, these spotlights become the story we tell ourselves, a story that feels like truth, but is really just fragments stitched together. The danger is that confirmation bias creates blind spots. When we only seek information that agrees with us, we stop seeing the bigger picture. We ignore data that could challenge us, teach us, or help us grow. In science, this is why experiments must be carefully designed to avoid bias. In personal life, it is why people often stay stuck in cycles, repeating the same mistakes, because they keep reinforcing the same beliefs. A person who believes nothing ever works out for me will subconsciously search for evidence to prove that belief. And of course they will find it, because the brain always finds what it looks for. The pull of confirmation bias is powerful because it feels good. It gives us the sense that the world makes sense, that we were right all along, but in reality it narrows our vision. We trade truth for comfort, and in doing so, we often miss the very answers that could change everything. Even clear evidence can't easily shift a belief once it's cemented. This is the stubborn nature of the human mind. Once an idea takes root, it becomes more than just information, it becomes part of identity. Challenging that belief is not simply about presenting facts, it feels, at a psychological level, like challenging the person's sense of self. That is why people can be shown undeniable proof and still hold on tightly to what they already think. The belief has fused with who they are. This phenomenon is known in psychology as belief perseverance. When people form a belief, they build a mental framework around it. Over time, they reinforce it with personal experiences, stories, and repeated thoughts. Each layer makes the belief stronger, almost like cement drying into stone. When new evidence comes in, instead of reshaping the framework, the mind often bends the evidence to fit the existing structure. This is why two people can look at the same fact and interpret it in completely opposite ways. They are not lying to themselves on purpose, their brains are working hard to protect what is already built. Consider how this shows up in health. Someone may believe strongly that a certain food or habit is harmful, even after scientific studies show the opposite. Because their belief is cemented, they will distrust the studies, question the scientists, or claim there must be hidden motives behind the results. Their conviction remains untouched. The evidence, no matter how strong, cannot penetrate the mental wall. The mind is not defending truth, it is defending comfort and consistency. The same thing happens with personal stories. If someone believes they are not good enough, even overwhelming evidence of their success may not shift that belief. Compliments, achievements, and recognition will bounce off the walls of self-doubt. Instead, the person will cling to the rare failure or the single criticism as proof that their belief is correct. This is the weight of belief perseverance. It filters reality so that the old story always wins, even when the facts scream otherwise. Part of the reason this happens is emotional investment. People do not just hold beliefs with their minds, they hold them with their hearts. A belief often represents years of experiences, cultural influences, or family teachings. To let go of it would feel like letting go of a part of themselves, so when confronted with evidence, the reaction is not calm acceptance. It is defense, denial, or rationalization. The mind resists change because change feels like loss. This is why debates rarely shift opinions. More facts do not necessarily break through. Instead, they can even backfire, causing the person to cling more tightly to their belief. Psychologists call this the backfire effect. Instead of weakening, the belief strengthens under pressure, like a muscle-resisting force. It is not that evidence lacks power, it is that the human mind is trained to value stability over truth. And once a belief is cemented, stability becomes the priority. Our minds filter out uncomfortable or contradictory info, only accept what fits. This is another survival mechanism of human psychology. The brain is constantly bombarded with signals, opinions, facts, and stories. If it tried to process everything with equal weight, it would become overwhelmed. To manage the flood of information, the mind uses filters, but these filters are not neutral. They are shaped by beliefs, values, and emotions. What passes through is what feels safe and familiar. What gets blocked is anything that creates discomfort, doubt, or tension. This is why two people can hear the same truth but respond so differently. One person may embrace it because it matches their worldview, while the other person may reject it outright because it threatens theirs. The information itself hasn't changed, but the filter makes the difference. The mind allows in what agrees with existing patterns and shuts out what challenges them. In this way, reality becomes less about what is true and more about what we are willing to accept. Psychologists call this selective perception. It's like wearing tinted glasses that color everything you see. If you believe the world is unfair, your mind will highlight every example of injustice and quietly ignore moments of kindness or fairness. If you believe people cannot be trusted, your filter will magnify every betrayal, but downplay every act of loyalty. The mind is not lying, it is editing. It edits reality to keep your inner world consistent, even if that means distorting the truth. This process also helps explain why uncomfortable facts are often ignored. Imagine someone who has built their identity around being healthy, but then they receive medical advice that contradicts their habits. Accepting that advice would create discomfort. It would mean admitting that they were wrong, that their lifestyle needs change. For many, this is too heavy to carry. So the filter goes to work, dismissing the advice as unimportant, exaggerated, or mistaken. In this way, the mind protects the self-image by pushing aside information that doesn't fit. The same thing happens in relationships. If someone is deeply invested in another person, they may overlook warning signs. Red flags that would be obvious to an outsider are filtered out because they don't fit the story of love, trust, or loyalty that the person holds. Accepting the contradictory information would force them to face pain or make a hard choice, so the mind simply edits it out. This is not weakness, it is human nature. We all filter to avoid discomfort. What makes this tendency so powerful is that it operates quietly. Most of the time people don't even realize they are filtering. They truly believe they are seeing reality as it is, when in fact they are seeing reality as it fits. The filter keeps life consistent, but it also keeps us from growth. By ignoring what makes us uncomfortable, we sometimes miss the very truths that could set us free. We judge arguments based on whether we like the conclusion, not on logic. This is called belief bias, and it is one of the most subtle ways our minds distort reality. When someone presents us with an argument, we rarely sit down and carefully analyze every step of reasoning. Instead, our brains jump straight to the end. If the conclusion feels right, we accept the argument, even if the reasoning is weak. If the conclusion feels wrong, we reject the argument, even if the logic is flawless. In other words, the conclusion decides the verdict before the evidence is even weighed. This tendency shows up everywhere. Imagine hearing a claim that supports your personal values. Even if the explanation is shaky or missing key details, it feels persuasive because it aligns with what you already want to believe. Now flip it. Imagine hearing a perfectly reasoned explanation for something that goes against your values. Suddenly, no amount of evidence feels enough. You'll find flaws, poke holes, and remain unconvinced, not because the logic failed, but because the outcome threatened your worldview. The conclusion is what carries weight, not the reasoning. Belief bias explains why debates often lead nowhere. People argue back and forth, but each side filters the discussion through the lens of what conclusion feels acceptable. If one side concludes that their beliefs are reinforced, they will find a way to justify it, even if the other side's logic is stronger. The mind is not searching for truth, it is searching for comfort. Logic is often twisted or ignored to protect a conclusion that feels safe. This bias also appears in everyday decision-making. A person might want to buy something expensive. When they hear reasons in favor of the purchase, they latch onto them eagerly, even if the reasons are weak. But when presented with strong arguments against buying it, they shrug them off because they don't like the idea of giving it up. The judgment of the arguments depends entirely on whether the conclusion matches the desire, not whether the reasoning holds up. In relationships, belief bias can keep people stuck. Someone might want to believe their partner is loyal. If a friend presents logical concerns or evidence to the contrary, the arguments are rejected, not because they lack merit, but because the conclusion disloyalty is too painful to accept. On the other hand, if someone is convinced their partner is untrustworthy, even flimsy arguments in favor of suspicion will be embraced as truth. The reasoning itself matters less than the emotional pull of the conclusion. What makes belief bias so powerful is that it feels invisible. People often believe they are being logical when in reality they are only being consistent with their preferences. The brain rewards conclusions that align with personal identity, values, or emotions. Logic becomes secondary. Instead of asking, "Is this argument valid?" we unconsciously ask, "Do I like where this argument leads?" And once that silent question is answered, the judgment of the argument follows effortlessly. Sometimes the weight of truth feels heavier than the comfort of belief. People cling to ideas not because they've examined every piece of evidence, but because those ideas soothe them. A belief can act like a blanket. It may not be accurate, but it keeps the mind warm. When someone feels lost, uncertain, or overwhelmed, holding on to a simple explanation or a hopeful narrative provides emotional ease. This is often why certain unproven claims or half-truths survive generation after generation. They don't need to be rational to serve a purpose. They just need to calm fear, reduce confusion, or give a sense of control in a world that feels unpredictable. Think of how superstition works. Carrying a lucky charm or avoiding a certain number doesn't change physical reality, but it changes how people feel. It offers a small piece of reassurance in situations where outcomes can't be controlled. Similarly, some beliefs are held because letting go of them would create emotional discomfort. Admitting that an idea is false might mean admitting years of being misled, or even recognizing that one's identity was built around something shaky. That's a painful realization. So many people choose comfort over correction. Beliefs also act as anchors in times of chaos. When the world shifts quickly, when new information is overwhelming, or when uncertainty grows too big to manage, the mind looks for stability. A belief, even if irrational, becomes that anchor. It keeps people grounded, offering certainty in a landscape of doubt. This is why movements, ideologies, or even conspiracy theories can gain strong followings. They create communities of emotional reassurance. The facts may not hold, but the feeling of belonging and clarity keeps people locked in. This tendency shows up in smaller personal ways too. For example, someone might believe they are just unlucky or not cut out for success. Rationally, this belief doesn't hold up. Many people have proven they can change their circumstances, but emotionally it relieves pressure. It explains failure in a way that feels easier to accept than the effort of change. It protects the person from disappointment by lowering expectations, even though it also limits potential. There's also a powerful link between belief and hope. Hope itself is not rational. It's not based on evidence but on trust in possibilities. Yet hope is essential for survival. People cling to beliefs that feed hope because it lifts them beyond the grind of reality. Whether it's believing that good things happen for a reason or that their struggles will eventually pay off, these ideas create comfort in times of despair. The logic may be thin, but the emotional strength it provides is undeniable. At the heart of it all is this simple truth: beliefs are rarely about truth alone, they are about survival, comfort and identity. People often prefer the ease of a comforting story over the challenge of a hard fact. The emotional relief feels immediate and real, while rational thinking requires patience, courage and sometimes pain. This is why beliefs can hold such a firm grip, even when logic has long walked away. We unconsciously twist reasons to protect our self-image and reduce discomfort. It isn't always about truth or logic, it's about feeling safe in our own minds. This is why people hold on so tightly to certain ideas, even when the evidence says otherwise. The simple truths are often the hardest to accept because they ask us to let go of illusions that keep us comfortable. Once you recognize this pattern, you start seeing it everywhere within yourself and in the world around you. And that awareness is the first step toward real freedom. If this message spoke to you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more insights that shift your perspective.